Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am AA Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Shea Belsky. Welcome to the show.
Aaron, thank you so much for having me on the Inclusive Dad podcast.
Absolutely. Why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Shea Belsky. I am an autistic self advocate. I happen to be based outside of Boston, Massachusetts. We were just talking about how I 90 cuts through both Minnesota
Yep.
and near Boston. It ends in Boston at the airport.
Okay.
And I have lived in the Boston area on and off for about 6 years now. I started off my journey in self advocacy, really kind of finding my footing when I went to Cornell University, figuring out how do I want to figure out my brain? How do I want to know about other people? And what can I do as a person to challenge myself and grow in areas where I think I want to grow, and also recognize boundaries where I think I just need to avoid those types of places and not push the subject too much further.
Yes, for sure. How did you? I saw in your stuff that you had an IEP growing up. How did do you think the IEP kind of helped prepare to be a self advocate, or maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I had an IEP in elementary school, middle school, high school, and I would not have had any of that without my parents who were
Hmm.
extremely supportive of me. They would go to hell and back for basically anything that I needed.
Sure.
And the IEP was an important fixture of that. I would say, especially in my time at elementary school, middle school, when I was experiencing a lot of social frustration, emotional dysregulation, and unable to express articulately like why I was feeling frustrated or why something was happening in a way that I didn't like. I think I was a young kid. Like I don't think I had the self awareness to fully be able to point to something and say, "This is bothering me." I
Yeah.
have the awareness of that right now, but not when I was 10 or 11 years old. I just didn't have the self identity to be able to really do that confidently. I do think that having an IEP helped me better understand through a more professional lens, like
Sure.
these are the things that are bothering me, these are the things that I'm struggling with, and here's what we're going to try to do, not necessarily to correct the behavior, but to provide pathways for Shay
Right.
to become more confident.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that you had a good experience overall with your IEP. That's awesome.
Yeah. The one thing that I think I wish that I'd done, which is becoming more common now, is participating in my own IEP meetings.
Okay.
I was given that opportunity in like my junior or senior year of high school, and I didn't take them up on that opportunity, and I wish that I had. And from what I understand now, that's becoming more and more frequent where people are being encouraged to do that. And I wish that I had done that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great tip. So yeah, I have a daughter, Cecilia. She's 22, and she was on IEP, and we would ask her similarly, "Do you want to come?" Sometimes she would, sometimes she wouldn't. So yeah, but for sure, parents try to include your child as much as possible. It is their IEP, so they need to give input and help shape it if they want to, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. What is your definition of inclusion?
My definition of inclusion is creating meaningful opportunities for everybody that seeks to not just open up doorways and open up pathways, but to create meaningful ways to people to actually travel through them. Like you can create job opportunities, you can create inclusive hiring processes, you can train managers on how to be neurodivergent friendly, but it doesn't matter if neurodivergent people themselves are not willing or able to actually walk those paths and participate in these different programs. I think just saying that you are inclusive misses the component of actually encouraging people to follow through on the other side and also ensure that they understand that this is inclusive, that this is accessible, and is meant to be equitable. If that is not just a buzzword, but is actually like walking the walk and talking the talk.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love that. And just something I want to add is the other thing I see, I get asked to be on different committees and stuff, and oftentimes there's not a lot of people that have disabilities or identify as having disabilities when I, kind of join them. And, thing for me is we need to have people, neurodivergent members of the team, or, other people with different types of disabilities on the team, because otherwise it's me as a dad trying to, do what I think would work for my daughter, but I am not neurodivergent myself, so it's very important to get members of the team on, that would actually understand what it
But you
looks
could
like.
still like,
Yeah.
go ahead, sorry.
No, you're good.
But you can still like advocate on behalf of your daughter. You
Yep.
still have the experience of being a parent, and that still matters to you. And
For sure.
it doesn't replace the lived experiences of a self-advocate, but it certainly provides more color than
Right.
people in a room who don't have lived experiences and don't have any connection to it other than an interest. And being an ally is great. I don't want to turn away people who want to be
Right.
allies, who want to be inclusive. That's like good, but better is having an amazing advocate like you.
Yeah.
And best would be having actual self-advocates, actual people who have these experiences, having a seat at the table. That's what inclusion is.
Yeah, for sure. You did a way better job of explaining than I did, so thank you. What does neurodiversity mean, and what's included in the definition of it?
Neurodiversity is a host to a wide variety of different conditions and behaviors, including autism, that's me, ADHD, dyslexia. It covered mental health conditions, including depression, anxiety, OCD. There is a very wide swath of different things that it covers, but at the heart of it, it really is a way to describe people whose brains work differently, who experience the world differently, who have different sensory inputs, or rather how they input things on a sensory level is different from person to person. For instance, like in a loud room of a lot of people talking, I have a difficult time fully being able to hear like individual people talking to me because my brain can't differentiate between like one person having a conversation versus another. I have to like really spend a lot of energy to focus on that one person, whereas other people can like filter that stuff out. My brain just does not have that capacity to do so. And for somebody who is dyslexic or who has dysgraphia, they may have a hard time processing written information or processing text. And just the way that their brain is understanding that information is different than it is for you and I.
Yeah, thank you for that. Do you want to go into maybe a little bit about, I saw you've worked at a number of like tech companies or different tech positions. Do you want to talk a little bit about your work life and what you've done?
Absolutely. I graduated from Cornell and started working at Wayfair, big furniture company. And that was my first real time where I had a long-term relationship with a management, with a team. I had done internships before, but those are like 3 months and you're done. So it's hard to build like a full, meaningful relationship in 3 months. But at that first job at Wayfair, I was able to really understand like, what does me being autistic actually mean to me in the workplace? How does it affect my team? How does it affect how I talk with my manager? And what do I need from my team and from my boss to actually thrive in the workplace and not just skate by? And what was unique about my first time at Wayfair, what was unique about my time at Wayfair in general, was that I had 5 managers in my first year. And that sounds like it would have been really stressful and overwhelming, but it was actually a blessing in disguise for me because I had the opportunity to iterate on how I communicated with my managers about me being autistic, because I tried one time, I tried another time. I was able to kind of figure out like, okay, what's landing here? What's actually sticking with them? When I say something or I don't say something, what are they taking away from it? And do I feel like there's an actual change before and after that? Right. And as typical as an experience as that was to have 5 managers, I do think that I benefited from it to have like my elevator pitch about me being autistic nailed down, because once I got to the end of the 5th manager, I was able to say, okay, I think I understand this pretty well. And I can explain to them what me being autistic actually means and what I need from them to actually thrive in the workplace and get my work done.
Do you have like an example maybe of something like how you started out in your first elevator pitch and then by the time you got to the 5th one, like how it had evolved? Do you have like,
like very early on, I would just say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Manager, I'm autistic. End of sentence. And that doesn't help them. That doesn't tell them anything about me, because if I'm autistic, then like, do I behave like a family member they know? Do I behave like somebody they've seen on a movie? Am I like someone from the good doctor or love on the spectrum, like how much autistic am I? And I don't really provide a frame of reference in that first time. And I realized early on that because I wasn't being specific, that I wasn't giving them any meaningful information. I was putting the onus on my manager to figure it out, but I wasn't giving them what they actually needed. Right. And from then, I started getting more specific, but then like not too wordy. Like I started getting specific, but I told them like a little bit too much, maybe things that weren't necessarily relevant. Okay. So then I would like tell them too much, which goes to the opposite problem of now I'm overwhelming them and now giving them too much to think about. And by the time I had my last manager at Wayfair, I had nailed it pretty down pat as far as telling them what they needed to know to advocate for me and to make it very explicit and crystal clear to them. This is what's going on, and this is what I actually really need help with.
Yeah. So did you also share that with like your coworkers, or did you just kind of share with the managers? And
I did. Like, I think the conversation with my coworkers was a lot less strict and specific as it was with my manager. For them, it was more about like, this is what you should know about working with me. This is my communication style. This is what you should expect. And in general, like none of them were ever really bothered by it. I had people who come up with questions. They say, thank you for being so open and honest about it. But I never felt that any of them were dismissive of it. My coworkers and my peers have always been great and amazing about just being great listeners.
Right. Yeah, as you're talking about like you explaining that stuff to your manager and coworker, I mean, I've had a number of jobs and I've never like, I mean, I also think that'd be helpful just for neurotypical people to share that, because I mean, some people learn by listening or reading or different ways or communicate differently. It's interesting that how that hasn't gotten into like more, I would say like mainstream where everybody kind of does that. I know like in IEPs or my daughter going to school, we would sometimes they talk like it's called like a one sheet or something, where it's like a sheet that kind of talks about the kid and explains things, where it's something similar in the workplace without, as you're talking, like that would also be helpful. Because like if that's interesting. Wonder why it's not more widely accepted.
I do have something similar to that I call like a working with me document, which I have used in the workplace and is used by neurotypical people too to explain like this is me, this is what you should know about me. It's longer than one page, but I talk about to other people like this is what you should know about me. This is my brain. This is how I talk. This is how I communicate. And I think it's a great way for other people too who are neurotypical to be able to discuss themselves like, hey, like I've got 2 kids at home and sometimes I get pulled away for something. I'm taking care of my grandparents who live a half hour away and I get pulled away for that sometimes. And I think it's a great way for people to talk about themselves a little bit, even if there is no mention of a disability or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. How can I support my neurodivergent direct reports, and what about my coworkers in the workplace?
In the workplace, if you are a manager of neurodivergent folks, the biggest thing that you can do to support them is just to talk to them and have a meaningful listening conversation. I think it's easy to jump to conclusions. It's easy to make assumptions about people, but no 2 neurodivergent people are exactly the same. And what you can really do to make their lives better and more fulfilled is to have a dialogue, have a conversation, and say, hey, I know that you have ADHD, or I understand that you are dyslexic. What sort of support or tools or structure do you need to help you get your job done? Or what can I do differently as a manager to actually help you get your job done? And that looks very different and takes different forms for different people. 2 different ADHD people may have completely distinct sets of strengths and support needs. And assuming that 2 ADHD folks are exactly the same is not accurate at all. And so as a manager, just really meaningfully listening and being able to improvise and do something different based on what they're actually saying and expressing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. From your experience, I don't know if there's a percentage, but do most neurodivergent people like share upfront their neurodivergence, or do most not share it, or is it kind of mixed? Or
it's very mixed. I think it really depends on the kind of work that people are doing. It depends on their level of confidence in it. I would say that I am more of an outlier for being as open about it as I am. And it's not to the point where I have it like stapled to my chest where I talk about it like all the time in my personal life, but I do talk about it in the workplace. I talk about it on LinkedIn, and I am open and honest about it to invite people to have discussions and conversations about it.
Right.
And I think that I am definitely an outlier in that regard. Not nearly everybody is as confident or as self-aware of their neurodiversity to have the same kinds of conversations. And I wish we lived in a world where it was much more inclusive, where people could feel confident and ready to have these conversations. But unfortunately, it's not quite that simple.
Yeah. That's a great point, because if somebody doesn't feel safe sharing that, then they're not going to, which, can lead to things that aren't so helpful. So yeah, the inclusion piece is very important. What's it like being a leader and being neurodivergent?
It's very interesting because I get a lot of people who assume that neurodivergent folks may not always be capable of leadership. Not in my current role, but I have had people come up to me being like, you're a manager, you're a lead. People are surprised by that, but not necessarily dismissive. There's a big significant push to close the hiring gap for neurodivergent job seekers. And if 1 in 7 people around the world are neurodivergent, of those 1 in 7, up to 30 or 40% are either unemployed or underemployed. Okay. And for autistic people, it could be as high as 80%. It's pretty crazy. There's a really big mission and initiative by organizations around the world to close that gap. The problem that I've experienced is that there's a missing element next to that. After you get somebody hired, how can you get them to take on more responsibility, to not just achieve like a meaningful salary, but increase their salary, increase their responsibilities, increase their purview? And I think I am definitely on the rarer side of being openly neurodivergent and being a leader. And I really emphasize that to leaders around me, that yes, like you can be open and honest about this. It's not like you can never be a leader and be autistic. It definitely takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort and self-reflection, but by no means is it impossible.
Yeah. Has there been any negative things that have happened because you've been so open and honest about being autistic and a leader?
I mean, the number one thing that I get often, not in work, but like from people who I meet is like, oh, you don't look autistic. And I'm like, well, what does it mean to look autistic? I think people assume that I get a lot of comparisons and references to Love on the Spectrum, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I like that show. I think that for people who don't know a lot about neurodiversity, it is doing a better job of showing the breadth of experiences of autistic people. The problem is that then that becomes like the definition people have of autistic individuals. Yep. And I get compared to that pretty frequently. And I wish that, number one, I wish that the show Love on the Spectrum showcased folks who had a broader set of support needs, not just those that are somewhere in the middle, but people who are non-speakers and people who are fully independent. I think that like even showing a broader sense of people's support needs would be great, because I think that it would do a much better job of showcasing individual personalities.
Yeah. I've never actually watched it. I've heard of it, but I have not watched it. But that is true. Like we all just, if we know one person with autism, then that's kind of how we think everybody is, which is not true.
Exactly.
So yeah, we need to have more different things. And that's another reason like I push for inclusion, especially for my daughter, is I need her to be out in the community. I need people to know who she is and not just, see her in a wheelchair and make assumptions about what she can and cannot do or what she's like. So that is, you need to keep working at overcoming those different expectations of people and how they view people, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Where should neurodivergent people look for support in their own journeys?
Relying on people around them is a really great start, because you may already have advocates and allies around you who are ready and waiting and want to be able to help you on the job or as part of a job search or as part of your life, but they may not necessarily know that you are struggling or that anything is going wrong or amiss. And it's okay to be open and honest to these people who have your back, who want to support you and they want to help you. I found often the case that I have a lot of people around me who want to learn more about neurodiversity, who want to support me. And all I have to really do is ask and tap them in. And then they're very eager and willing and able to do more and more.
Right.
And I think that every neurodivergent person has at least one ally in their camp, someone in their corner. And I would encourage people to just figure out who those folks are and lean on them.
Yeah, that's great. Why is the unemployment rate for neurodivergent people so high?
For a lot of the reasons that I mentioned already, neurodivergent folks struggle in job settings, they struggle in interviews, especially when companies are often inflexible with how they hire or how they retain their employees. They try to make people fit through a certain process or pipeline, which is not designed for them. There's a term of like culture fit versus culture add. A lot of organizations I've found that are not neurodivergent friendly try to make people fit into their cultures rather than allowing them to be themselves and bring their vibrant, unique experiences into an organization. And the companies where I have thrived at the best value me for being a culture add, to bringing my bespoke experiences, how I approach problems, how I think about things, and not trying to change or distort how I think things. And the reason that neurodivergent folks have such a hard time getting jobs is because there's a lack of understanding here that we're still trying to fit square people through round holes. And the square people are not ever going to become round holes. A dyslexic person will not stop being dyslexic. They need to be in an interview and in a job which allows them to have the proper tools and technology and support to actually be able to do their job. And same goes for ADHD people who need additional help and support for focusing, for productivity, and for getting stuff done. And if they don't have the support that they need, they're just not going to work out. And some companies just don't understand that.
Yeah. Do you have any tips, let's say, or maybe for yourself when you're looking for like a new place of employment? Is there ways you can kind of figure out if somebody is open to working with more neurodivergent friendly, or some things maybe on their website, or how to kind of maybe figure that out?
The existence of like an ERG on disability is a huge positive flag, a green flag.
Okay.
I am super into ERGs. My current company is in the process of creating one for disability, which is really exciting. And the fact that it exists is a huge positive affirmation that this company cares about people with disabilities. And maybe they also celebrate Disability Pride Month in July. Maybe they celebrate Autism Acceptance Month in April. Maybe they support Neurodiversity Celebration Week in March. I could keep going on. But the point is, like, what's on the social media? What's on their website? What are people on LinkedIn saying about them? Kind of figuring out what are they putting out there for social media, and also what are people seeing organically on places like LinkedIn or Reddit or other corporate social networks.
Yeah. Can you explain what ERG is, please?
Yeah, ERG is an employee resource group. It is a group within an employer or organization that brings people together on a shared demographic, a shared interest, a shared something. Common ERGs are for Black people, for women in tech, Asian, African Americans. Like there's multiple different ERGs that are for lots of different things, LGBTQ. And one of those is Disability ERG, which we are in the process of creating, and it's going to launch in July for Disability Pride Month. We're really excited about it.
Is there like an actual stated purpose for the group, or is it just to get together or actually like help, the company advise them on certain issues? Or
every ERG is different. Every organization approaches the idea of an ERG differently. And I don't want to speak on behalf of every ERG ever, but most have a mission statement. What is the purpose of this group coming together to do? What is the point? How do we support our employer, whether it's through a equity and inclusion lens, whether it is through improved hiring, whether it is through making sure that our products and what we're actually working on are inclusive. Every ERG's purpose is a little bit different. And for us, when we think about Disability Alliance, we are trying to focus on improving the organization from an accessibility lens, for making sure that hiring is done in a way that is inclusive and accessible, and making sure that people with disabilities are represented in decisions that affect us, such as digital accessibility, workplace things that happen as far as office physicality, and things of that nature.
That's awesome.
And every ERG is different. So some ERGs are just affinity groups who collect people, who gather people together on a shared topic. Others are much more action and decision oriented, but it really varies.
Awesome. What do you like to do for fun?
I'm a big runner. I run around Boston all the time. Boston's a big running city. I've
Okay.
seen the Boston Marathon a couple of times. I have volunteered for the Boston Marathon. I am hoping to run in the Boston Marathon this year with the Doug
Okay.
Flutie Foundation. Doug Flutie Foundation is an organization that supports autistic people and their families, and they have an
Okay.
adaptive runner program. And so I'm going to run with Doug Flutie Foundation, hopefully raise money for charity for them. So I'm very excited to get the opportunity to run Boston Marathon, which is one of the biggest races in the world.
Yep.
This is one of the 7 major marathons that professional runners can aspire to run and complete to get a big fancy medal. It's exciting.
That's awesome. Have you ever ran a marathon before?
I did the virtual Boston Marathon during COVID when they let anybody run it for the 125th anniversary for it. That was just me like running the distance of a marathon, but like it wasn't a race, it wasn't supported or anything. I just kind of like winged it, honestly, and it was very tough and difficult. But I did technically run a marathon in the past, and it was very painful.
Yeah. About 10 years, well, I'm not sure exactly, 10 years ago, I ran a half marathon, and I loved training for it and doing it. It's just I haven't done it recently, but it was fun. I don't know if I could do a full marathon, but a half was pretty fun.
I look at people who do like Ironman competitions. Those people are crazy. Those are ridiculous. I could never do anything like that. I think that even just running a marathon in general is a feat of great strength, and doing that and 100+ mile bike ride and swimming for a couple of miles, I'm gonna pass. I could do a half Ironman, maybe one day. I haven't trained for it. It's like one of those dreams that I have, but I'm not actually that serious about it at the moment. I'll get for the marathon first.
Yeah. Is Doug Flutie, was he a Bills quarterback?
I don't remember the exact history behind the Doug
Flutie.
I
know the name, yeah. I remember the name, so that's cool. How'd you get into running?
I was just tired one day of going to the gym all the time. Okay. I just said, like, I was staying somewhere for an internship. I'm like, I don't really like the gym that's here. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to run a mile. And it was exhausting, excruciating. But I'm like, hey, like, I actually don't like actively hate this. Right. So I ran a mile. Then I ran 2 miles, and I just kept going. I got back to Cornell, which has a lot of great places to run. Okay. I got actual running shoes. I got nicer shorts. I got much better setup, and the rest was history from there. I just kind of picked it up because I was tired of going to the gym all the time to work out. I just didn't like it. And now whenever I have to run inside on a treadmill, I call it the dread mill with a DREAD treadmill.
Yeah. Do you listen to music or podcasts, or what are you doing?
I'm a big music and podcast person. I host my own podcast as well called Autistic Techie, where I talk about a lot of stuff about neurodiversity in the workplace for tech folks as well. And I do a lot of music, a lot of like rock, I would say on the harder rock side. I'm looking forward to 3 Days Grace. They have Adam Gontier coming back now. They have a new album coming out soon. I'm a big fan of Breaking Benjamin. I've done a little bit of Bad Omens and Sleep Token. I would say like rock leaning on the harder side. And also like a lot of like smaller indie artists that if I named them, nobody would really know who they were, but I still like them anyway. And that's kind of like how I also run. I run with music. That's important to me. It helps me kind of like zone out and focus on something totally different.
Yeah, when I was training for my half marathon and ran it, I had like a playlist, and like Eminem or certain songs, you get to a certain point starting to get tired, and those would kick in, and it kind of gave me a little boost of energy to get back into it. So
that's me and like Rise Against. Rise Against is definitely one of my favorite bands, and like there's a couple of songs there where like I'll be running and I'll find myself running faster to them. It's very much like stop slowing down and start running. It's kind of like motivating me to keep moving and turn up the dial a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. What is one tip you can share to help the listeners today be more inclusive? So just anything somebody can start today to be more inclusive?
Listen to people around you, because you'd be surprised what they have to say. People may be willing and ready and able to share and talk with you about what's going on, but they might not really know who to turn to. So just be a good listener.
That's great. Where can everybody connect with you?
I host my own show called Autistic Techie on any podcast platform of your choice. If you want to connect with me personally, my name is Shea Belsky. There's only one of me. If you look me up on LinkedIn, on Instagram, wherever, you will find me. There's only one of me, I promise.
Awesome. Ready for the last question?
I'm ready.
Do you like Spam lunch meat? Yes or no?
No.
No, that was fast.
I don't like a lot of canned food, I would say.
Okay.
Like I'll cook with something and that comes out of a can, that's fine. Like I won't like eat that stuff right out of the can.
Yeah.
It's just not for me. That's a sensory thing for me. My taste buds are a little bit out of whack.
That makes sense. I live by Austin, Minnesota, which is right on I-90, and that's where the Spam Museum is located and where they make Spam. So I've been asking all of my guests that question. It's always a fast yes, fast no, or I haven't had it. That's kind of the three.
I have tried it before, and it's not for me. I don't mind if people like it. It's just not for me.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Of course, Aaron. Thanks for having me. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. To those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.